Well, hey, Michael, let me get started with the obvious. You are pro life, against same sex marriage, you're a Democrat, and more importantly, you are a believer. What do you say to people who have a hard time dealing with all of those things, man, that I just said?
Well, right. So yeah. Let me. So, right. That's a really big question. Here's how kind of a few thoughts that come to mind. First will be um, that um, the positions that we take in politics and relationships are not merely um, ideological positions. They're
Yeah.
not simply intellectual, um, and they're not for their own sake. That the things that I believe I believe are true not just for me but for all people, and I believe that they're
Mm,
true because they're for the good of all people. And it's important as Christians that we hold those things um, uh, uh, lightly, um, and that we uh, and that we hold the gospel tightly,
wow.
and that we never put sort of we never hold sort of positions on issues so tightly um, that there's no room for gospel love and charity and insight, and for us to hear um, uh, the voice of the Spirit, and be able to uh, apply our positions with with grace and with judiciousness. And so um, so that would be the important thing. It's important in politics. Sometimes Christians comfort themselves with the fact that they're offending people by telling themselves that sort of right. Well, the gospel is offensive, and the thing we have to be aware of is that sometimes we're just being offensive, and
Yeah.
we need to be able to separate the two. But those are kind of the thoughts I had. If um, if we understand our views in politics as being for the flourishing of all things, of all people, and that is the foundation for our political views, then we'll be in a better place to be in conversation in a pluralistic environment.
Hmm. Michael, you talked about holding to the gospel tightly. How do you
Mhm.
hold to the gospel tightly, man, in a culture for the most part, and I think a lot of Democrats would say this too, and Republicans definitely would say, man, politics can be dirty, Michael. How do you hold to the gospel tightly in that type of arena and environment?
Yeah, well, um, one of the ways there are a few things. One is to make sure that you're in relationship with people who think differently than you do,
Wow.
and to make sure um, and to so political polarization is at an all-time high right now. Um, people are ideologically segregated geographically. That they only live with people who think the way they do. They
Yeah.
only the media sources that they get only affirm what they already think and their pre-existing assumptions. Um, uh, we know that political partisan identity is driving people's views more than people's ideas are influencing their party. So if the political party changes its position on an issue, we see people change their positions on an
On
issue
issues.
instead of the other way around. And so it's important to be in relationship with people who think differently than you do, and it's important to instill in your life um, disciplines um, that um, keep you focused on first things, um, and then b I think we need to be thinking about what are sort of 21st century spiritual disciplines that prepare us for the increasingly public life, social life that we lead. So in politics, what that looks like is um, uh, I think we ought to belong to a political party. Um, I, 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 um, uh, but as a member of a political party, one way that you could push back against sort of the partisan pull is to be more critical of your own party than you are of the opposing party.
Hmm.
And so if you look through your Twitter feed, if you look through your conversations and find and see that um, all you're doing is sort of um, uh, is sort of um, beaten up on the other guys without a whole lot of introspection um, on ways that your party and that you can better yourself and that the party can better itself, then that's a sign that maybe you aren't being led by um, the way that the gospel and scripture influence your politics. Maybe you're being more led by whatever the party platform is at the time, or whatever the partisan goals are of your party at the time, whatever the script is. And so there are a range of things that we could do if we're thinking constructively. And Dallas Willard said that grace is not opposed to effort but earning. And so
Hmm.
we can actually put some effort into thinking about how to be involved in politics, how to be involved in public life as pastors, how to speak to and not be quietists about politics, but do so in a way that keeps our feet firmly planted in the gospel.
Wow. Mike, let's go back a little bit here. When you first received the call to come on board to work with President Obama, um, man, what was that like, man? And can you walk us through just the experience of getting the call, first of all, that most of us will never get, Michael, but also can you walk us through the yes process, man?
Yeah, man. So it's right. So it's um, it's like a series of calls. I think about the call I got to come to Iowa. I think about the call I got um, to ask me to go to the White House, and so um, that the call to come to the White House, which was really like a call that was more of a permanent thing, right? Campaigns have a time horizon.
Yeah.
At first, the call to go to Iowa was come down. We'll see how it works out. So it
Right. So you
wasn't like
never
I was.
know. Yeah.
It wasn't like I was. My flight to Iowa was not because there was a commitment of years. There wasn't even a commitment of weeks on the other end of that.
Mm.
Um, when I got the call to go to the White House, um, as I write in the book, when I became a Christian, I was already interested in politics. Um, what became very clear to me was that I was no longer going to be able to find a home in politics, that
Mm.
there was something superseding political attachments and affiliations. And so I understood that, and it's important not to sort of treat or talk about politics as if it's um, uh, so different from any other area of work. So the challenges that I face in politics are very similar to the challenges that a person in business has to take with what's driving their business. Are they being led by profit too much? Are they being led by the security of keeping their business going? For teachers, are they are they leading kids astray because of the curriculum that they're having to teach, or are they teaching methods that are burdensome on students and not allowing them to grow and flourish? in politics, in some ways, right? The questions
Yeah.
are different, but at a foundational level, it's how to be faithful in a complex, complicated, in a vocational environment. Um, what was helpful to me is I was working directly with, I wasn't in the communications office. I wasn't.
Mm.
Um, I wasn't. I was in. I was working directly with religious leaders. And a major part of my job was to make sure that the views of the faith community were heard in policy and outreach conversations. And so that provided, I think, a bit of a firmer, sort of clarifying sort of footing um, than if my job would have not been sort of explicitly, built around um,
Gotcha.
built around faith. So
Gotcha.
that was certainly helpful.
Now, everyone wants to know this question, Michael, so I have to ask it, man. What was it like working with the president, first of all, and what is President
Yeah,
Obama like, man?
yeah. It was an immense honor. So um, it was an immense honor to work in the White House. You never lose sight of the fact that you're working at the White House. It's not something you get used to.
Yeah, I bet.
You know, and so that's uh, the privilege of it all was always present.
Hmm.
Working with the president, um, he is unquestionably brilliant. The man consumes and retains information
Huh.
um, at a in a really impressive uh, way. So uh, he would know briefing materials I wrote better than I did. Um,
Wow.
um,
I can't imagine
uh,
that.
so that's one thing. He is, um, and of course, there are times when this is times when, um, right? He's um, this wasn't always consistent. This wasn't always, but in general, he had a capacity for grace and for
Hmm.
appealing to our better angels in a way that was um, pretty significant. He had a dignity about him both in public and in private,
Wow.
um, especially in moments of crisis, in moments of when the attention, when the eyes were on him. He he had a grace and dignity about him that I think will be a major part of his legacy. And now, just I had the opportunity to you know uh, pray with him in private and in public settings, and
Hmm.
um, I think that we got to see him comfort the nation many times over the course of his time in office. Um, and his compassion in those moments, in both the public and the private moments, um, were profound.
Very interesting. Now, the
Uh,
book, Reclaiming Hope, um,
yeah,
Michael, why'd you decide to write it, man? And why the title?
yeah. Um, so well, there are a number of ways I could answer that. Um, uh, the, First, on the title, um, I believe we're in a time, as we've always been,
Hmm.
where false hopes um, are not good enough. They will not sustain us. They will only lead us down wrong path. Um, and that if we are going to navigate the challenges and the opportunities that lie before us, we need to do so clear-eyed about the reality of hope, of the hope
Wow.
that's offered by Jesus Christ.
No,
Um,
I totally get that. It came throughout the book over and over again, to be honest with you, man.
yeah,
Which is what it's rare that a title, just I would say reverberates throughout a book. But this title
yeah,
definitely did, though, and it just kind of leads me to a couple more questions here, Mike.
yeah,
Michael, you started a company called Public Square. Why'd you start it, and what are you learning, and what are you getting out of
yeah,
it, man? Is that a fair question?
yeah, yeah. So public square strategies. Um, so I didn't leave the White House. So I mean, as I started writing the book, I worked on the president's second inaugural, and then the inaugural was over, and I could have gone back. I made a decision that I wanted to do something else for a number of reasons, but one of the reasons was I saw um, the um, the landscape, political, cultural, and religious landscape for Christians get increasingly more complex, and in some cases antagonistic, um,
Hmm.
um, over um, over the last decade. And when you're in government, I had great relationships with religious leaders and organizations. We were able to get great things uh, accomplished together. But at the end of the day, um, when you meet with with folks, and when you're in government and they're not, um, everyone knows that after the meeting, there's a post meeting, and
Yeah.
I have to meet with bureaucrats and government folks, and they have to meet with their board, and um, there's a healthy degree of separation there. And in this season, sort of in this season of my life, I wanted um, to not have that degree of separation. I wanted to be the post meeting.
Hmm.
I believe that the American church is at a junction point in history where the decisions that we make in the next 3 to 5 years will do much to determine the trajectory of the American church for the coming decades. And so I wanted to be as close to being involved in that process as possible.
Gotcha. Gotcha. I totally get that. And last question, do you think we've lost hope, Michael, to be honest with you? And how, as Christian leaders, how do we lead a country back to hope, man?
Yeah. I think it's undeniable that we have. The good news is that hope is never lost to us.
Hmm.
It's always there. It is a baseline. Um, hope is moving towards us, no matter which direction we're going.
Wow.
And so, and,
And
and
that right there
so,
is deep, Michael. No matter which direction we're going in, it is always moving in our direction. That's very profound.
and and so, yeah, I write in the book about this German psychologist Herbert Plug, who wrote this terrifying and yet really encouraging thing. He was working with patients who were dealing with severe depression, and some had even attempted suicide. And he
Hmm.
wanted to see what it took to get on the other side of that kind of serious depression, that serious despair and hopelessness. And he found two things. He found one, that those who made it to the other side found what he called a fundamental hope, which is more a type of knowledge, a way of being, than sort of a hoped for sort of. It's more of a way of knowledge and the type of being. And then the second thing is that they had to reach utter despair. They had to. Their secondary hopes had to be disappointed in
Hmm.
order for them to reach fundamental hope. And
Very interesting.
if that's where we are as a country right now, that our secondary hopes have been disappointed, then as pastors, as people who care about spreading the gospel, this is not just a time of challenge. It's a time of opportunity that people are finding their false hopes, have turned up empty, and are looking for a hope that can sustain them, that is strong enough to bear them through times of challenge. And the only hope that does that is hope in Jesus Christ. That is the only
Wow.
hope that will stand up to the test of time.
Man, Michael, all I can say is that's a good point to end. I want to go on, but I'm like, man, that'll preach, Michael. Man, thank you so much. In all seriousness.